Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to Lead, Grow, Live. This week, I am so pleased to have Johnny Terre. He's the founder and head coach at Pelican State Running. When you listen to this episode, there is so much here. I want you to really pay attention to when he talks about challenge, the challenge that his athletes, his team members in Pelican State Running, they take on, and the challenges that he takes on to reach the goals that they've set. Here's John's episode. Thanks for coming in, John. Man, I am so excited to be able to talk to you today because so much of what you're doing aligns with the things that I do working with business owners and entrepreneurs. So, tell us exactly what Pelican State Running is all about.
Pelican State Running is a training and racing group that I founded maybe a half dozen years ago. With the goal of taking runners' goals and helping them to reach those goals. And those goals can range from races that are short as just a few minutes. These are road running, trail running, and track races, up to some athletes doing races that take a day, an entire day for them to complete. Up to 100 miles is the upper limits of what we're coaching athletes to do, and everything that falls in between. And these are, generally speaking, these are working professionals, people that are in the midst of the storm in their life, but they're carving out early morning hours, late evening hours in order to achieve these goals. So I have created this team and this coaching organization just so that I can kind of coach them along and help them to reach those goals and bring those goals into their life.
What types of folks are members of the team?
It's a broad range of folks, people that you know all the time. You bump into them every day. You would be surprised to know they're parents. They are working professionals like nurses. They are doctors. Some of them are business owners. They're architects and engineers. They come from every walk of life. There are just very hardworking people that for some reason they've found their way to distance running and endurance training and endurance racing. And they want to go from where they are now to reach a little bit higher goal. And they come to our company and our organization in order to have the guidance to kind of get past where they are and get to where they're trying to go.
Yeah, so this is kind of fascinating to me because when I was a kid, and I'm a good bit older than you, but running a marathon was the idea of it was so out of it that nobody really did it. And then to hear you say that some of your team members are actually training to run a day, like an entire day, a marathon is nothing compared to that, right? And so how did we get here? Because if you recall, the 4-minute mile was broken in the late 70s, I guess, or 60s.
1950s.
Okay, I'm way back. But the 4-minute mile back then, that was unheard of.
Unheard of.
Running marathon, very, very, very few people did that. And again, we're talking about running for an entire day. How did we get there?
So to try to condense it down into a short version, I think that there's marked booms in the running world, the business of running, the sport of running. There have been marked booms. We are likely in the third of those booms now. And the third boom is signified by an equal amount of females in the sport. It's also signified by working professionals, people who are doing a whole bunch of other things in their lives. It's no longer just those athletes who were really gifted in the sport, typically male athletes in the initial running booms. It's broadened out and it's been opened up to so many different people from so many different walks of life. But what I think that they're searching for is they're searching for a way for them to learn and grow in this narrow area of their life, that they can then take that growth and that understanding of how to accomplish hard things, and they can bring it into any other element or any other aspect of their life. And they're just using this running because they really enjoy it. They may enjoy different elements of it, but they all find something about it that really appeals to them. They accomplish goals, things that are very, very hard. And we learn as human beings, I think we learn more through struggle and failure than we do when things are very easy. These are folks that are putting themselves in that uncomfortable position day after day after day. And in the moment, they're finding their way through those difficult times. And then the rest of their life becomes so much easier when they've been through something difficult. So as to how they get to 100 miles, some of them just progress through the distances. As the distances get a little longer, they accomplish those distances. They feel satisfied with their accomplishments, and then they go a little further and they go a little further. And that has traditionally been the way that people get to run marathons. They run half marathons before they run marathons, and then they run 10 kilometers before they run half marathons, and they run 5Ks once they get started. But there are some folks that really go straight to these long distance races right away. And they run 50 miles or a 100-mile race, and they do it when they begin running. And it would really be quite shocking to those folks in the initial 1 or 2 booms of running to hear this concept. Kind of a funny story about the first 100-mile race. There used to be 100-mile horse races, and people would show up at these trails with their horse, and they would go to see whose horse could finish the race with them on top of it first. In 1973, I think that was the initial year, a guy showed up with no horse and just said, I'm going to do it on foot. And ever since then, we've been having that particular race. It's called the Western States 100. It's the most iconic 100-mile foot race in the United States.
It's truly mind-boggling to me. You know what I mean? Because it is amazing that it started off as a horse race, and then now people are just running. Right?
They're just doing it.
And you're getting a lot of folks that go there.
You would be very surprised. This is probably, I would say with pretty good certainty, that this is the largest growth area in running right now. It's ultra marathoning. So let me define that quickly. Ultra marathon means anything that's longer than a marathon. A marathon is 26.2 miles, typically held on the road. Most of us have heard the term and kind of can associate it with a long race. 26.2 miles is the distance. But in fact, anything that falls longer than that, which 50 kilometers, 50 miles, 100 kilometers, and 100 miles are the most common denominators for that ultra marathon. But there are any distance longer than 26.2 miles can be termed an ultra marathon. And this segment of running, and running is a very big and broad segment, but this is the fastest growing segment, I believe, of running.
You think that's because no one's done it before? So now it's interesting to more people and they want to go and achieve challenges that no one else has done?
If I told you I knew the answer to why it's growing, you could call me a liar. I have some hunches, and I really believe it's back to what we talked about. I think that's a significant challenge that you're putting in front of someone.
Yeah.
You have to manage not only the physical elements, but it is an absolute mental marathon in itself to keep yourself engaged, to keep yourself moving, and to train for it causes you to put a lot of your time and energy into that goal. And once they accomplish it, it helps them to do anything else that they're trying to do, because they've been able to do something that's just so difficult physically and mentally. So I have some ideas as to why, but each person brings their own why. They bring their own reason to challenge themselves like that.
So when it comes to running, and I'm not a runner, but when it comes to running, it's a lot like anything that's difficult. There's an emotional component. There's a training component, which you have to train emotions as well, right? And then there's also there's training, there's emotional, there's physical. As a coach, do you have a framework that's something that I don't know besides physical and emotional? Because you have to overcome a lot to do what you do.
The more I've done this, the more I've learned. And I've learned more through my failures as a coach than I have through my successes as a coach. And I think that anybody that you have in this chair would probably tell you the same way.
Yeah.
But this is how that story is embodied in my experience, along with the physical training that I'm outlining for them, which is to help them reach the goals that they bring to me. I'm also telling them things along the lines that both encourage and discourage some things that come up. And we have to be very, very attentive to certain things that are going on with each individual athlete. Every person, I believe, has a stress bucket. It's all different sizes. Some of them have a stress cup, a little teacup, and others have a humongous 5-gallon bucket. And everything that they do in life pours into that cup or bucket. Even the physical that we're putting them through to get them to their goals. So you, as a coach, you need to be very attentive to when they get close to the top of their stress bucket. And you need to help them many times to back off from their training. And that's one of the more important elements of having a physical human being as a coach.
Correct.
Any coach, even an AI tool, can make an athlete tired. But it's whenever they're tired, can a human being look across a table at them and tell them, we need some time off?
That's a great point.
So along with that, monitoring them on an individual basis, I oftentimes will write to them as a group. And that idea is to help them to understand the broad strategies that all of us need to have. Because I think of coaching in many different ways, but one of the ways that I think of it is we all have strategy and tactics.
Correct.
And they're not the same. Strategies are the larger concepts, the overarching beliefs that we have. They usually don't change much. We need to be kept on those paths. But tactics can definitely change. And if you're not changing tactics, you're probably falling short. So those are smaller little adjustments that'll happen along the way and oftentimes on an individual basis. So I do write to them with the overarching beliefs and the overarching strategies as a group. Along the way, I'll often have to have individual conversations with them about how they're doing, maybe some changes in our tactics. Are we reaching your goals? And these are lessons that I have learned many times through missing the mark.
Yeah, sure.
With the athletes. And either they've left the organization or they've left running altogether, or they come to me before any of that happens and we're able to get back on track with them and get them in the right direction. So that's one of the many areas that I have that is part of my philosophy on coaching. And you were mentioning the physical training, the emotional training, and another element. And I think that we're trying to get them going in the right direction. And once we get them going in that right direction with a group of others that are going in that same direction, you need to get out of the way and just let them progress as they can.
Yeah, man, I'm fascinated with the growth of the sport and individual people, the growth of individual people, and just exceeding what was normal 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. It sounds like it's just blowing up. And so I love the phrase booms. You know what I mean? There was a 1, 2, and we're on the third boom. How much more do we have to go? 1,000 miles. I mean, I just can't see it just because I'm not in it.
There are races right now that are the new era of ultra marathoning that are 200 plus, 250, and there's now a 300-mile race.
Just multiple days?
It's a multiple day thing where the fastest athletes would be somewhere in the 3-day range, and the course might be open for 5 or 6 days for the majority of those athletes. We're talking about a team that is following these folks along and meeting them at certain checkpoints along the way and feeding them, making sure that their feet are taken care of, getting them a couple of minutes of sleep from time to time, bringing them to a doctor to be checked out so that they can continue along the path. And you say, will we ever get to 1,000? I wouldn't rule it out.
Yeah.
I wouldn't rule it out.
Truly, it reminds me of the Tour de France. You know what I mean? That you have teams, and I want to come back to teams too, because, what I always say is lead your people, right? And so what you are leading a team of runners. They all have individual goals, and you're there to serve and support them and teach them and guide them. Talk about the team, Pelican State Running, and why it's so important to, of course you can be an individual and you'll coach with them and do that, but why is it so important to have a team?
What I've found with the team growing is that when we have a group of runners who train together and race together, we almost always are finding better results for the same exact athlete. So year over year, you might have one athlete that's a little bit on their own. They're somewhere in between two other groups. But then you get to the following year, and that same athlete now has 2 or 3 other regular people to train with, and they're going towards the same exact race or goal along the way of maybe 100 to 150 days. So they find themselves showing up for each other 2, 3, maybe 4 days a week, early in the mornings, usually in the hot, in the humid conditions. They pull each other along. They lend each other something to drink or something to eat, and then they cheer for each other. And what that does is, more often than not, those athletes reach the goals that they bring to me. More often than not, they have much more enjoyment in the sport. And it just works that what my role is oftentimes to pair up the right personalities, the right athletes who have the right physical needs, and to get them working together and educate them, and then to be a little bit of a library to them, so that once we get them on that path and they're working together, they have check-ins with me and they're asking questions, and I'm giving them the answers that they need, as opposed to that one athlete who's kind of by themselves, where you really have to do a lot more for that one person on their own. Those folks are successful sometimes too, but more often than not, when we have a team approach and we get the right folks in the right seats on the boat rowing in the right direction, those are the ones that have the results that are closest to what their goals are when they bring it to me.
Yeah. Pelican State Running, I guess, started off as a passion project for you, and then it's developed into a legitimate coaching practice, and you're serving and helping a lot of people. What are some of the steps in the process of the growth and development of Pelican State Running? Like, where'd you start? How'd you get to where you are today?
It started with just one person who asked me for help in a very specific and narrow field. That person was trying to run a marathon a little bit better. And that's in my own running, that was probably my most prominent distance that I trained in. So I think it was a natural progression to be able to help people for that one distance. And then after the first person approached me, I looked up and I had 3 or 4 folks that I was helping.
It's the way it usually happens.
And then after 3 or 4 folks, it grew even doubled from there. And then it doubled again from there. And it got to be where I looked up one day and we had an entire team wearing the organization's colors. We had a whole group of people who were approaching me with questions, and we had folks who wanted to work in our group. They would just say, I just want to be a part of this team. That's another bit that helped me to understand the power of the team working together. For sure. Is that they become visible, and it's a visible presence where these folks are having fun. They're all in a very safe environment. We have a couple of rules, if you will, and sportsmanship and health and safety are at the very top of that. So they're all behaving in a certain way. They're going to win well and they're going to lose well. I mean, if they have a great day and a poor day, they're still going to hold themselves with a high degree of integrity. That's one of the rules of the organization that I outlined when we talked about strategy earlier. It's an overarching principle. It doesn't change. And of course, amusement. These are working professionals. They have to have fun what they're doing. And so we make sure that this is not some fourth job that they have to manage. It's supposed to be for fun. They're going to commit a tremendous amount of time and energy. They're going to sacrifice a whole bunch of other things. And they're doing all of that so that they can reach their own goals. So it's important that we don't lose sight of that. Once we clear those 3 must-haves, if you will, health and safety, sportsmanship, and fun, then we get to what they come to me for, which is performance outcomes. And we can start really working on getting them to their goals. But those first 3 have to come first. That's part of the team, and that's part of being on the team, and that's part of being a member of the organization. It kept growing to a point where I had the great opportunity to work with my wife in a different capacity. She is in charge of telling the stories, the instructional videos that we're putting out. She's telling the stories of the athlete's performance. She's trying to communicate on a broad basis in order to tell what Pelican State Running is all about. I think it was a pivot point in the organization when I realized that this was more than just a running and coaching organization, but it was an opportunity for the 2 of us to grow a lot closer together as we worked on a collective goal in our project. And I have been so happy to work with her in this capacity. It's really made it worthwhile to me at a different level than I ever really imagined beforehand. So
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Do you see needing any other folks, administrators or other coaches?
I can't wait until that's a step that we have to get to, but I don't think that at the current time that's something that we're going to need to do. Yeah. And it's just because these athletes are carving out the last hour of their day or the first hour of their day to reach their goals. She and I are both working on many different goals together. And there has to be a point where we might have to pare back on what we're doing in life in order to kind of take it to that level. And I think that an obvious example would be maybe an assistant coach that handles a certain segment of the training for a very specific category of athlete that we're training. And that could be some way where we can grow as an organization and have a bit of help along the way that would help us to get a little bit bigger and a little bit more successful than we've been thus far.
Yeah, I love it. So something you said while you were talking, well, you said a couple of things. One, you have to learn how to lose well, right? Or learn your lessons from having a bad day that day. The other thing you just said with your wife is we may have to pare down on some of the things we're doing here to focus here. What comes to mind is you just have to say no to some things so you can say yes to others. How does that impact your athletes and your team members? Focusing on this rather than some of these other things they may want to do?
I have a saying that I share with them. It always goes over kind of strangely the very first time until I'm able to lay down the right context. I tell them, imagine the amazing things that you're not going to accomplish. And they look at me like,
well, there you go. Hold on. Another.
Yeah, imagine the amazing things that you are not going to accomplish. And they say, Coach, what does that mean? And I say, human beings can do so many different things. We can climb a mountain. We can learn to wake surf. We can do gym work. We can work on our businesses. We can go on vacations. We can do so many different amazing things that make us happy. And we're not going to do a lot of those things because you came to me with a goal, and the pathway to get to that goal is going to be to say no to some of these ideas and say no to some of these things that you're very capable of doing, at least for the short run. This might be a 12-month or a 36-month process where you establish yourself and reach your running goals. And once you get to those running goals, you can start adding in some of those more amazing things that you want to do. But for the time being, we're actually going to say no so that we can say yes to your goal. And that's what we do. We try to have them put a few things down and really push themselves to reach these running goals so that when they do it, it's so much more significant to them. They will remember the sacrifices that they made in order to reach these goals. A common example of what they're trying to accomplish is to run the historic Boston Marathon.
Yeah.
This is the oldest and longest running marathon in the United States and in the world. It started in 1897 and it's happened every year since. There's qualifying standards in order to get into the race because there are so many folks that want to run it that they have to limit the number of folks that get into it. So along the way, this is the most common reason that people reach out to me. It's so that they can have a clear pathway drawn for them to reach a Boston Marathon qualifying race and then be able to do the historic right turn on Hereford, left on Boylston, and finish across the finish line on Boylston Street in the Boston Marathon. And that goal that they have by far is going to take more no's in their life. It's going to take more things that they're going to have to put off and wait on because it's a standard that's constantly improving. That means that year after year, as more people chase it, it's getting harder to reach. So it's a moving target for one. It's already very difficult to get into it. They open up 30,000 slots, but that's around the world. There are 8 billion people on the planet chasing that goal. So it's really tough for them to reach. And they definitely have to put things in their life on pause and say no to plenty of things. Simplest thing they have to say no to is staying up late at night.
That's right. Yeah.
So
have you run it?
I've been lucky enough to run the Boston Marathon 2 times.
Good.
I've qualified for the Boston Marathon as early as 2008 and ran my first in April of 2009. And my oldest and closest running friend asked me, and I accepted. We go back to the Boston Marathon every 10 years. So our second one was 2019. We'll race in 2028 and qualify for our 2029 race. And we want to keep going back. We want to go back for 2039 and 2049. Awesome. Yeah, we just want
I love how you say we will race in 2028 and qualify.
Sure.
So you can see it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love that. So much of what you say aligns with the work that I do with business owners and entrepreneurs. It's not marathons, it's not running 100 miles, but in their world, it seems just as hard. Tell me how your life has changed since that first person asked you to coach with them and get them to, a better marathon, to today when you're working and you've developed this team. How has this impacted your life, and bringing your wife in and having her involved? It has to have changed.
Absolutely. I'm so much of a better person than I ever was. And not to get very deep, just to say that I've been challenged.
Yeah.
So when you go through certain challenges and you have to figure out how to communicate to people, you're putting yourself in that position, just like these athletes who are trying to reach their goals and have to really make certain commitments to their running to make it a little bit higher priority than other things like staying out late or others. I've had to figure out how to help each person broadly and individually. And that has challenged me, and it's made me a better person. And you said the word alignment earlier, and I thought about alignment many, many times. My life aligns with coaching.
For sure.
It has always aligned with running, racing, and coaching. And so what these folks can say about their coach is, this guy really loves this stuff. And it's even made your question, how has my life changed? It's made that a lot more clear. Because it shows more than just myself running. It shows my love for them running. I'm invested in them. I want them to succeed. When they reach their goals, I'm the second most excited person on the planet for them. They've reached a goal that they didn't know that they could. We pulled that performance out of them. And now they get to go and do whatever it is beyond that goal that they were searching for. Many times it's the Boston Marathon. Yeah. And it's just made me a better person because of challenge. And I think of it like this. They have in their mind a certain way that it's going to go. And oftentimes it doesn't go exactly that way. And in order to help them to get past wherever they get hung up, you have an individual that you have to communicate with. And I must first, this is something I've learned through failure, but I must first develop coaching equity. You might want to call it leadership equity. But that means that I have to make sure that they are bought into the plan and that they understand and want the feedback that sometimes is just not as rosy as they may be thinking. So initially I would just tell them what I wanted them to do or what I expected them to do or what they should be doing in that capacity. But now what I realize is that each individual has I've earned a different amount of coaching equity I have built up with them. Some of them are, they're all ears, they're ready to hear. And then others, I really need to be cautious as to whether or not they're receptive at that moment to what we need to explain. And so those are things, when I say that I'm a better person, those things have translated into other elements of my life.
Yeah,
how I
for sure.
listen to those bits with my wife. If, is she receptive? My father, my son, my mother, my coworkers, are they at the point where they're receptive to me giving an answer? Maybe. If they are, great. But if not, I need to build up more equity with them so that they will be in a place where they're receptive to what I'm trying to communicate. And then we can move forward with what it is that we're trying to accomplish physically. So you might be wondering, like, I thought you physically coached these athletes, but you don't get that opportunity until you have them psychologically and mentally on board. So the real value, just like with somebody who has employees and they're trying to get them all rowing in the right direction, it's the same thing with athletes. You must first win that battle, if you will, of the mental and the psychological need to be aligned with your coaching philosophy, and then you can teach them what they need to know about tactics. And strategy is the overarching, unchangeable philosophy. But if they're not willing to listen to it, you're probably going to hurt the relationship rather than help it along.
Yeah. I can tell you from one coach to another, you have earned a lot of coach equity from me today. Yeah. This is outstanding. And thanks so much for coming on. This is filled with lessons here. And so just keep doing the great work.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to John Eter's episode. I learned so much as a coach, listening to his strategies and his tactics and how he works with his runners. And I hope you found that too. Don't forget to look at the show notes to see where you can get in touch with John. And while you're there, like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Hey, do me a favor. If you or somebody you know, it would be a great guest on Lead, Grow, Live, please reach out to me at Jeff@GetCompanyGrowth, Jeff@GetCompanyGrowth.com, and never stop leading your people, growing your company, and living your life.